The number of known coronavirus cases has now passed 40,000 in 28 countries. 910 people have died in the outbreak, all but 2 of them in China.
With the ease of international travel and the pace of modern life, there's greater potential for viruses to spread further and faster. And as the government declares coronavirus a serious and imminent threat, just how concerned should we be? Here in Brighton, with coronavirus on the doorstep, it's a reality people are having to face.
It's one thing seeing it on the news, and then it's one thing actually seeing it around the corner, poking through the window, seeing the people in the hazmat suits.
It was bad enough to hear it was from Brighton, but I wasn't expecting from my neighbourhood. That's very worrying.
I think we're getting a bit sort of over the top about it, really.
Tens of thousands of people have contracted this latest strain of coronavirus. So far, the death rate is estimated at just over 2%. Compare that with SARS, which killed 10% of people, and MERS, which killed a third. While flu has less than a 1% mortality rate, but there is an important difference between that and this coronavirus.
People build up immunity to the flu, so over time they're exposed, so that the flu tends to be really mostly a problem for those who are elderly or have some other underlying conditions. The other, I think, critical difference is that for the annual influenza we have a vaccine, and a fairly effective vaccine, and that, of course, reduces the morbidity and mortality.
The race is on to develop such a vaccine for this coronavirus, but it's unlikely to be in use much before the end of the year. As new cases continue to rise, some people aren't taking any chances, with a big increase in demand for face masks.
I've managed to get hold of this specialist one which has a filter and a valve, but most people are going out and buying surgical masks. How much protection do they offer?
They're not able to really filter out finer particles such as viruses. Any mask really is only as good as the person wearing it as well, because if you were to wear a mask and then take it off and not wash your hands and then touch your eyes or eat some food, you've just risked contaminating yourself as well.
So the message is now is not the time to panic. Washing your hands is still the best form of prevention. But it's early days with this form of coronavirus and no one really knows how it will develop. Charlotte Lomas, Sky News.
Well, it's no secret Australia's tourism industry has been hit hard over the past few months, first by the devastating bushfire crisis. Now we're seeing the fallout from the coronavirus outbreak also threatening the sector. Joining us live now is Simon Westaway. He's the Executive Director at the Australian Tourism Industry Council. Simon, I appreciate your time. Firstly, on the impact of coronavirus, just how much of a hit has the Australian sector already taken as a result of those flights being stopped from China?
Well, thanks, Ash. Look, it's been hit very, very hard. You know, we're almost 2 weeks in now in terms of in essence, a travel ban from Chinese nationals coming into our country. That's up for review this weekend, this Saturday, and we anticipate a decision will be made by the federal government by week's end. But if you look at the numbers are large. The Chinese visitor market's worth in excess of $12 billion a year in terms of annual tourism receipts. We'll be going for the best part of a month at the end of this week around group travel, Chinese group travel not being able to come here, and that represents about a quarter of the overall market. So, you know, we'll be pushing well above $1 billion here in terms of current costs, but there's a real social and economic hit that's now occurring, particularly in our regions from far north Queensland, around the Gold Coast. You know, our members have seen some significant drop-off in patronage in the places such as Phillip Island and the Great Ocean Road, where, as well as the Blue Mountains, where you get a lot of Chinese group travel for day trips or overnight stays.
Well, as you point out, we don't know when those flight bans are going to end. If it does go on for several months, as hopefully the worst case scenario, can our tourism operators actually ride that out, or are we likely to see businesses go bust? Will we see the tourism sector putting out the hand to the government for some sort of assistance? What's the game plan here?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question, and the game plan is this. I mean, we've written to the Prime Minister and to Minister Birmingham late last week, and we'll be communicating this publicly over the course of this week. I mean, we believe the time is now for a recovery package of a similar sort of line and length to what was provided around the bushfires. I mean, the bushfire crisis, which many parts of the country experienced, was tragic from a range of fronts, but from a tourism industry perspective, it cost us well in excess of $1 billion over a short period of time. So we're in the same quantum now, and the government's been very supportive. They're engaging well with industry, but industry needs a helping hand here. We've got BAS statements due at the end of the month. Most of our tourism businesses are small to medium-sized businesses with a quarterly BAS payment, so they've got those due. Cash flow is king, as we all know, in many businesses, and those that are normally experiencing really good flows of Chinese visitors, and keep in mind we're just coming out of Chinese New Year, which has been a bit of a high. We're just seeing that all that ongoing travel completely drop off. So it's a really critical time, and we do need to work constructively with government on a way forward now.
So with your request to the Minister, have you put a dollar figure on what sort of scale we need to see in terms of that assistance package in dollar terms?
Yeah, we have. Look, that's a great question. Look, initially we believe it should be of a similar quantum to what the bushfire recovery package for tourism was, which was 76 million, and we believe a similar number makes sense at this time until, as you say, we see how far down the road we're going around significant travel restrictions. I mean, coronavirus is virulent. It is serious. The industry completely gets it. We also know that there are containment measures which are being applied right around the world, and the advice we're getting out of the Federal Department of Health is that China is getting on top of this, and that in due course containment will allow us to have a discussion again around when the market can be reopened back up. And look, ultimately it has to be reopened up from a goods and services, people-to-people flow. China is our largest international market for exports. It's critical to our industry. Obviously public health is preeminent, but at the same time, once we start to get on top of the coronavirus, we have to find a way forward. And in the interim, industry, small business, those people that are directly exposed from a financial and economic perspective around the lack of Chinese visitors, they need a helping hand now. And we've got to work together with government and support industry, and particularly businesses around their cash flows.
Simon, could there be a silver lining here with more Australians being willing to holiday domestically? Is that something that we're starting to see already?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the domestic tourism industry is what underpins tourism. I mean, the international side's the glamour set, if you like, and that's been growing exponentially for the last 10, 15 years. I mean, what's occurred with China, it's just been an amazing story. It's now our largest international market by both volume, around 1.5 million annual short-term arrivals, and in overall value around 12.3 billion. It's a larger market than New Zealand, even though we're much closer together as countries by physical distance. And the domestic market itself is close to a $100 billion visitor economy in its own right. So yes, we do believe and anticipate we'll see more Australians staying closer to home. We all love to travel. We all get out and about, and there's a lot of marketing activity which is trying to stimulate and bring forward that demand to try to offset what's occurring in terms of the Chinese market. And that's I guess is part of our call to arms now, is that we need to have some emphasis around the domestic market, and at the same time particularly arm Tourism Australia with additional support so they can get out and remarket our country, because once coronavirus has got on top of, and we're very optimistic that we will get to that stage. I mean, we've got to remember, in a globally competitive industry where the Indonesias, China itself, Europe and other markets where people have stopped travelling internationally will start travelling again. And we do need people to continue to consider Australia as part of their bucket list, but also go about ticking it and come here for a visit.
Yeah, we hope you're right. Just finally, Simon, we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday that the government will look at an easier, more streamlined visa system for Indonesians. It followed, of course, the visit by the Indonesian President here in Australia. Just how significant a change would that be? Are we, at the moment, missing out on big numbers of Indonesian tourists because of the red tape around the visa system?
Yeah, look, we're very optimistic about what's occurred. It's fantastic to get this free trade deal over the line. It means a lot, obviously, for sectors such as the agricultural sector, financial services, students in terms of international student to and from. But for tourism, it's a fantastic opportunity. Indonesia is knocking on the door as a top 10 inbound market for us now. It's around about 220,000 visitors per annum, around about $1 billion in annual tourism dollars. We publicly are very optimistic about the opportunity there. Some loosening or some additional places for working holiday visas, having more people being able to come here, particularly out of Jakarta, and come here for short breaks, and making it an easier, more seamless process around visas is a great opportunity. We really should have much closer people-to-people links with Indonesia. It's fantastic to see that two-way engagement occurring between the Indonesian president and our Prime Minister and right through government. And, you know, tourism's right behind this, and Indonesia should be a much stronger market for us moving forward, and we're obviously encouraged. We need to do that because if China takes a while to come back online, we do need some of these other international markets, the US's, the UK's, you know, India and in Indonesia, to start stepping up more, because we're going to have to start to fill this void if the Chinese market comes back more slowly than perhaps we anticipate.
Yeah, absolutely. A few tough months perhaps ahead for a lot of our tourism operators, including a lot of small businesses, of course, right around the country. Simon Westaway, appreciate your time. Thank you for your insights. We'll keep a close eye on the Minister's response to that request for a recovery package for the tourism sector as a result of the coronavirus and the impact it is having on the tourism sector.